Welcome to another Kundalini After Dark session. I'm your host, Brent Spirit. I'm here on Zoom. We've got 21 in the Zoom room, a few tuning in on YouTube as well. Thank you all so much for being with me here live tonight. If you're tuning into the recording in the archive, you can join us for the next Kundalini After Dark. The link is in the description to join, along with links to a bunch of other things as well. We've got the Kundalini Q&A meetings that take place on Zoom about once a week. We've got some links to some courses. There's a link to kundaliniawareness.org as well, where you can find a directory of licensed mental health professionals with Kundalini awakening experience. Check it all out. So tonight, a topic came to me. It's pretty relevant, pertinent to me today, this past little while. The topic that came to me was to discuss the paradigm shifting power of the Kundalini awakening process and how that can be challenging, difficult, uncomfortable. It can cause the old parts of us that are recognizing that they're becoming obsolete. It can cause those parts to freak out a little bit, to want to cling, to want to try and stick around a little longer than they're needed. And that can be, of course, challenging. And so we'll talk about that. And I think this idea of the paradigm shift may be at the root of some of our uncomfort or some of our discomfort with this process. And so we can look at it from that angle tonight. So I'll share some of the notes and things that came to me, and then I'll open the floor for others to share as well about anything on your mind related to the Kundalini awakening journey. Of course, I'll introduce this theme. Maybe you have some thoughts, some ideas, some things to share, some advice, some insights. Maybe you got some questions for myself or the group. That would be great. And of course, if you're coming with other topics that are on your mind, you're welcome to bring them up and we can take our conversation in any direction. We'll let it have a life of its own, let it breathe and see where it goes together. So let's look at this idea of a paradigm shift. So as this idea of the Kundalini force, right, this intelligence of Kundalini Shakti begins to move through our system, our entire system, not just our body, not just our energy system or our chakra system, but of course, including our psyche, including our ideas, our model of reality gets surged with this energy, right? The fact that there is just an energetic process itself has a lot of implications, right? Because we didn't learn about this typically. Most of us didn't learn about energy or the non-physical or the spiritual from our parents or from our school. We didn't learn about the potential of what our body is capable of undergoing. And so when this stuff starts happening to us naturally, it bumps into our beliefs about reality, about ourselves, about our system, about our body, about our mind, about our spirit, right? And that can be uncomfortable at times because it challenges what we may have believed about all of this, about reality, right? And so with this process, our paradigm, our model of reality needs to be reprocessed, needs to be relearned, goes under a transformation. There's a death and rebirth, and that's uncomfortable. It's often painful, it's challenging, and in fact, it can be quite terrifying at times, especially if some of us have come into this process unknowingly during a time in our life where things were going quite well. Many of us here um, may not come from that place, but I've encountered a significant amount of people who say, Brent, everything was going well in my life. And then this thing happened, this Kundalini thing happened, and everything just fell apart. And so, as they're having these really earth-shattering experiences take place within their system, it can stir up a lot of fear, a lot of fear. Understandably so. And so, we need to reconsider everything about what we understand about reality, about ourselves, about our paradigm. And this is a lot. This is a lot. There's a certain labor involved in it as well. And sometimes we may even get a sense that as we go through these experiences, we get a sense of, oh shit, I've got work to do. And that's a lot of work. I have to reconsider everything. And depending on how old we are, we have to go back and reprocess a lot of various beliefs, a lot of data that we may have picked up along the way in our lives. We have to reprocess it based on these new experiences that we may have had, right? We need to reprocess it through this paradigm that now involves an intelligent, spiritual energy, non-physical energy that's not impersonal, but very personal and intelligent, far more intelligent than we are on the level of our minds. So this is a lot, right? And so there will be parts of us that come up that want to turn back, that want to go back to being quote unquote asleep, want to go back to the old paradigm where we didn't see or experience any of this. There will be parts of us that want to unsee what we've seen. There'll be parts of us that want to unexperience what we've experienced, right? Especially if those parts were doing okay, or they were doing quite well, or they were able to manage, right, based on what they believed was true about reality, right? And so those parts may come up, and that may be the cause of a lot of discomfort as you go through this process. It can be something in the background as well. On a psychological level, there can be a certain existential confusion or dread of doing this work, or maybe even depression based in, old paradigms and old beliefs being shattered. That can stir up a depression as well, right? So in the midst of this process, it's likely that you will find yourself walking between two worlds, sometimes simultaneously, sometimes oscillating back and forth. It can be like trying to ride like two bikes at the same time. So on one hand, you may say, that you've had a very deep, meaningful experience where you felt connected to a benevolent, infinitely intelligent source that loves you and cares for you, and that you're safe always here. And that's beautiful. And then in the next moment, you may go back to the older paradigm of your life where you felt like you were alone and the world was a scary, dangerous place, right? And so you can oscillate between these two paradigms. It's nice when you remember and you feel in alignment with that infinitely intelligent source, or we can call it divine or God or Shakti or your higher self or whatever. It's beautiful when you can feel aligned with that. But when you fall back into the old paradigm, when you oscillate back to the old paradigm, it can be extremely uncomfortable, especially with the contrast of going back and forth. And so these are things that need to be worked out. And going back and forth is sometimes how it gets worked out, right? That contrast highlights our old beliefs in a way that we can really see it, and not only see it, but feel it. We feel the discomfort of being in that old paradigm and how constricting and out of alignment it feels, how uncomfortable fear feels, right? Or how uncomfortable it can feel to always want to be in control, right? So our nervous system begins to respond with this discomfort, letting us know that we're out of alignment. And so that's why sometimes it can be pretty challenging. And so these shifts take time. They take time. There's this idea of making a quantum leap, meaning you just shift from one paradigm to another. It requires a lot of energy, and it can be quite taxing on the system. Whereas the other alternative is that this happens gradually over time, and it can be a little bit more gentle on the system energetically. And so many of us are not going to make a major quantum leap where we just wake up one day completely different and our old paradigm is completely blasted and fallen apart and there's nothing remaining of it. Many of us are going to make a gradual shift that unfolds over years, over years. And that's probably safest and best for our nervous system energetically. But that's why there are times where you may feel that the pendulum swings from alignment and then back into feeling like you're out of alignment, back into operating in old paradigms, right? As they fall apart. So the intelligence of God, the intelligence of Shakti, of this non-physical spiritual energy, of source energy, understands what we're going through here. It understands and knows that this is challenging, this is difficult. It understands how profound this is for us. It knows how firmly we have clung to our old paradigm. It understands how effective that old paradigm may have been for us. And so it's very compassionate with us. It's patient. It's supportive of our unfolding here. So we can at least know that, when God disrupts your life, God knows what it is doing in your life and understands how difficult such a disruption may be. So that can bring some relief. At least the force that is doing this to us knows what it's doing and is a little bit compassionate as we go through this. So that can help. So there will be parts of us that will prefer to have not glimpsed any of this, to have not have felt any of this, right? However, the implications of this awakening process are so profound that they just can't be ignored. They can't be ignored. Parts of you will want to shy away and pretend it's not there and avoid or suppress or ignore. But then another big part of you is going to say, I have to keep looking at what this all means. I have to keep supporting my process with that's unfolding within the system. And of course, that's why we find ourselves here. That's why we find ourselves engaging in spiritual practice or exploration, right? So there will be passive parts of us that would like to stay in the old paradigm. But hopefully, those active parts that are willing to go on the journey can lead us. So, how can our paradigm not shift with this process, right? We're experiencing something so profound on every level, right? Of course, we're going to have a paradigm shift. Of course, our model of reality is going to have to undergo some changes. So, if you've had a mystical experience, a spiritual experience, a Kundalini awakening experience, on some level, either consciously or subconsciously, you're going to be asking yourself, how do these experiences affect my model of reality? Right? We can ignore these questions for some time, but eventually you're going to have to consider your experiences and reconsider your model of reality and make those updates, make those changes, do the renovations. And as we know, renovations are stressful, uncomfortable, they take time, usually more time than we may have allotted for or expected, right? And if you want to talk about budget, they usually cost a little bit more than we may have expected as well, right? So we want to account for all of this and understand that this is how the process is, right? It's that significant. So I'll leave you with some questions to contemplate. What do my spiritual experiences imply about who I am, about my power and my potential, about my purpose for being here? So prior to your spiritual experiences, right, you may have been told that you didn't have much power, that you didn't have much potential, you were unworthy, that you had to earn God's love, you had to earn your place here, right? Maybe you were told that your purpose was to achieve worldly success or to please your mom or your dad. Or maybe you were told you didn't have a purpose, life is meaningless and random. Well, now you've got to contemplate all of these existential questions given your spiritual experiences, right? What do my spiritual experiences imply about how reality works, right? If you've had some profound experiences where you've had, say, non-ordinary phenomena, all the clairsentience, clairaudience, maybe you experienced telepathy, maybe you experienced something out of body, right? Maybe you began to see energy or feel energy. Maybe you performed a miraculous healing. Maybe you experienced miracles in your life. What does that say about how reality works? Big questions, big questions, but these are questions that I encourage you to sit with, let them sink in and make the paradigm shift, right? Many people will say that they experienced a miracle, but then they don't seem to incorporate that into their new model of reality. And that's why they feel uncomfortable. Am I actively incorporating the data I have gathered through my spiritual experiences into my paradigm and model of reality? Am I preventing this data from disrupting what I was previously told about reality? If so, why? Right? So maybe you're not ready to make such a paradigm shift in an active way. Inquire why. What is it that you're afraid of? What is it that you're holding on to? Right? Maybe it's just the idea that there's so much work that needs to be done, right? But remembering also here that a lot of this work happens on an energetic level. There will, of course, need to be some intellectual work done here on the level of the mind, some psychological work, of course. But a lot of it takes place within the body, right? And the body knows how to go through this process. The body knows how to make these shifts. We just have to allow it and support it. And that's the beauty of this process. Right? It's natural. It's natural. We're wired for it. We came here into this life, into these bodies, knowing this would be what we're going through. So we're already predisposed to going through this process. We just have to allow the intelligence of our system to carry it out. So we're at the leading edge of the expansion of consciousness here. And we're figuring it out together. It's uncomfortable because we're moving into the unknown, and the unknown is scary, right? It's unknown, but that's where we find growth. And we're here to grow, we're here to expand, not to stay stagnant in just what we always knew. So I'll leave you with those questions to contemplate. I'll open the floor up for some others to share as well tonight. Maybe I've sparked some ideas, some contemplations. Maybe you have some things to celebrate, to vent about, maybe some questions for myself or the group about your Kundalini awakening process, your spiritual awakening journey. It's all welcome here. All welcome here. Remembering that we're not here to discuss any medical advice, just here to share, having a spiritual conversation on the internet. Check out the links in the description. Thank you all so much for being here. I really appreciate all of your support, all of your donations. It goes a long way. Thank you. So let's see what comes up in our conversation tonight. Let's hear from Catherine.
Hi Brent. Hi everyone. Thank you. This is a great conversation. On my end, I'm very proud of myself. I just finished kind of grueling master's degree, but it was really, I mean, it's all my process, so it was really exciting. It was about conscious dance as a form of quantum social change. So looking at quantum social theory, and I think for me, so much of my Kundalini awakening has been wanting to reconcile the mystical with the scientific. Like, I want a kind of scientific basis for understanding the mysticism. Right brain, left brain. It's kind of how I think about it. And that's been very prominent for me. So, yeah, it was really fun to bring some, because that's exactly what I was saying was like, how do we catalyze a paradigm shift amongst people that are, for empowerment and agency? And I think that quantum social theory is this like beautiful framework. Anyhow, I ended up getting into this kind of like portal, and I'm still in it, and it's a little uncomfortable because I feel like so I'll digress a little bit. I reached out to the academic who really put this in the collective consciousness, and he blew my mind with some additional information. Like, but there was some so basically it's like David Bohm's theory of the implicate order that like our minds, our real existence is in this domain outside time space, and that all relationships are in the mind, and essentially reality is a holographic projection from the mind. It's and I've seen reality bend and twist in ways that I'm like, I believe it. I am one of those that believes that there's a lot more going on. And quantum weirdness is this whole, I mean, it's a wild, and that the idea is that like the block universe that, past, present, future all exist at the same time, and that there's a fixed reality, and but like really sinking into this idea that like it's a holographic projection, like reality, and like, but also needing to integrate that I'm here, the duality. And so that's been really, but anyways, like this idea that all relationships are in the mind, like this, I'm entangled. So entangled means like it means a spooky action at a distance, that like my action affects somebody else. And that's also been the nature of my awakening. And yeah, so I'm entangled with this professor, and I get that it's for awakening purposes, but it also feels a bit uncomfortable because it's just like I think about him, like not intentionally. It's just like I wake up and he's on my mind, and I'm like, what does this mean? That the uncertainty, I think. But and then the other thing I just wanted to say, because I think we are quantum beings. I think that, quantum leaps are part of, I think quantum works in spirals and bursts, and, there can be major kind of breakthroughs, but also that healing is nonlinear. It's a nonlinear process. And if you, for me, I was just kind of reflecting on if we're healing from the space of past, present, future, all being at the same time, like clearly healing is nonlinear. Like if healing is originating outside of space time, then it's not going to be logical, but for me, it's emotional. I mean, it's just so much about tapping into the emotion and allowing the emotion to just ride through and not needing to intellectualize it all the time because that's my favorite defense mechanism. But yeah, and just that the way knows the way and God's in charge. So, but yeah, I think paradigm shifts, it's the, I think the nonlinear nature of all of this is humbling, at times. So that's what I would
Yeah.
say. Thanks.
Well, thank you so much, Catherine, and congratulations on completing your master's.
Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, brilliant, brilliant insights there. Yeah, if we start to see that it is nonlinear, that everything is here and now, that this is a holographic reality, do we just ignore that and go on with our day as if that's not something we've just seen, or do we sit and like reprocess everything through that? That's been my work lately, and I think you said you're trying to sink into that realization, and that's what I was trying to get at here is like somehow letting these new ideas of what reality is actually have some practical, embodied, integrated implications in our life, right? Whether that means we let go of fear, whether that means we understand that we can heal, come into a better understanding of what we're here to do and what's possible. I think that's how we really step into our power that this process invites. Great insights there, Catherine. Thank you so much. Let's hear from Tom and then we'll hear from Jay. Hey, Tom.
Good evening, everyone. I'm glad to be here. Thank you, Catherine, for that. Yeah, congratulations on your new letters. Um, just one of the insights that I had was very physical, very mental, emotional. Was I don't have to be. I'm not at war with the world anymore. I've gone through a lot of my life just in a wrestling match with life, try and when I want something, going after it, willing it to happen in a really what can I say, rough way. I mean, really, putting a lot of energy into that. And when I've done that, I've noticed that it usually doesn't work out the way I had expected. It's like sometimes wanting something is better than actually having it. Uh, And that kind of I've learned to drop that thing and just for the most part, if I want something, just let it happen. Let things happen. If I need something, that's different. But if I just want to fulfill my desire, well, they often, getting things often doesn't add up to much. So that's been a big one, not having to fight with life so much, letting Kundalini work its way through. Doesn't mean I can't I doesn't mean I don't have to do anything. I still have to go to the store to go shopping. Uh, it's not going to come to me. But that's been a real relief in many ways to be able to relax a little bit and not worry because worry is a big part of that when you're fighting with life. You always worry that you're not going to get what you need, but drop it and try to enjoy it more this way. Anyway, pretty simple, I guess, but it was a really pleasant thing to find out that relax.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's about it.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. I can relate. I would say the majority of me doesn't want to fight and wants to relax, but then there's like small parts that come up that are like, but wait, we need to fight. And there are historical parts from, way back and there conditioned parts that don't want to lose their job, right? They're fighting to keep their job as the need for them is no longer there. And they can be very convincing as well in the moment. They can be very convincing. And this is what I was describing about this discomfort that this process can bring at times, because there's the part of us that knows I don't need to fight, and it's great when we're flowing. And then these other parts get triggered and come up, and they can really take us for a ride. Do you experience this sometimes too, Tom?
Oh yeah, and I have to work at dropping. Just recently had an argument with someone And it felt afterwards as I wanted to win. And there was nothing to win except we ended up not speaking for a month and a half. But it felt like for about a week, it felt like I'd swallowed a stone. And there's this thing in my gut saying, God, what a stupid thing to do. But it was something in me that wouldn't let her get away with it. I wouldn't let her get, I did not that I wanted the last word, but I wanted her to understand that uh, her behavior wasn't acceptable.
Mm.
At the same time, mine probably wasn't either. Uh, and just, this idiot inside just had to, just like I had, something not at work at one of my groups that I belonged to, an argument with a supervisor, which I thought was stupid. And um, I, uh, I just had to insult her. And it wasn't, you're stupid or something like that. It was like to just something to, I don't know, knock her off her pedestal and afterwards I thought, why did I do that? I didn't, didn't do anybody any good. She just feels bad. Now she hates my guts, probably, quite possibly. And I feel uncomfortable the whole damn time. So, uh, yeah, it's not easy to do. You fall back, or just go over things in your history. When I was 14, this guy punched me in the shoulder, and I never got back at him. Like that's how silly humans are,
Mm.
or at least I'm.
No, I think we're all we're all like that to some degree or another.
Talking
Yeah, you're
about
not.
me.
Yeah, you're not alone there, Tom. Yeah, thank you for relating it and sharing. Yeah, yeah, these parts come up and they, I guess, want their time in the light before finally retiring, it seems. Their time in the spotlight for a bit. Yeah, it's uncomfortable, of course. Thank you, Tom. Let's hear from Jay.
You're welcome.
Hello. Hi, Brent.
Hey, Jay.
Good to see you in your natural habitat.
Thank you.
Um, yeah, I'm not really sure if I have a point, but a couple of things kind of came up while you were talking, and I think the first person, she said a couple of things that also brought some things up. So I'm just gonna express some things that I've been reflecting on about about the point about the need to update your mental models. Like I feel like that's been so important. Like because as you awaken, there are visceral shifts in your perception, and then your brain starts getting confused about, there's nobody here, things aren't real, certain things are real, certain things aren't real, and you kind of have to tell yourself as a concept, the new reality, right? There's no self, it's all one. And yet they're still an individual, right? So like you kind of have to update your model so your brain doesn't go insane thinking, you don't exist and all that, right? So that's definitely something that I've done and I keep doing, and it's very helpful. But a place that I find myself in is where, just due to the difficulty and the length of what I've gone through in my process, which Brent, you know a good deal about, I can't really place myself on any kind of trajectory, right? Of, you know, this happens, this wakes up, and then it goes to this chakra, and then you purge this much, and then you're here. I just can't place myself on a trajectory. And I'm also, I've had some deep realizations, and the realizations you have, people, there are these mental models out there that say if you have these realizations, then you wouldn't have OCD that's debilitating, which I have at times, right? And I'm not saying that's a correct mental model, but that's a model that's out there that's prevalent, right? So those are just some examples of how my mental models, this dichotomy of the utility of constantly updating my mental models to reflect a new spiritual reality, a new visceral felt sense reality, and at the same time the instability of some of those mental models after my own unique experience. Um, just because my brain's wired differently in different ways. And so this tension between the utility of new mental models and finding myself now in a place where I really don't know where I'm at. Like I genuinely, this isn't like a Zen thing, like koaning myself. I honestly don't even know where I'm at. Like there's no, I can access easily. There's no one here. There's vast spacious awareness. That's all that's here. There's a sense of love to pure awareness. There's a sense of clarity, strength, all the facets that everyone talks about. It's all here. And I honestly don't know if it's just my brain, creating that reality and if all of it's bullshit. Like I honestly don't know. Right. And the point that you were talking about earlier about oscillating between these two paradigms of being a scared person that's separate in a big bad world where you're not safe, and the reality of feeling connected to a divine reality that's got your back and you're just good, right? And some very wise sages say that that sense of deep safety and trust in reality is synonymous with enlightenment, right? That deep relaxation. And I feel like I'm obviously not there, but I oscillate. Like yesterday, I was so depressed. I was so utterly depressed. And this morning, I woke up with this depression. It took me 3 or 4 hours to get out of it. And then now I'm back in a kind of visceral reality of like feeling safe and safety and life's got my back and there's a divine reality. But then just yesterday, I just realized like none of these mental models can help me. I can't rest on any of this. I can't trust in any of this. All I can do is just be in this place where I don't know. Like I told myself, I don't know how life works. I genuinely don't know how life works. And I'm just trusting. That's all I've got left. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying this to be disheartening. I'm not saying this to be controversial. It's just literally like that's all I can do. And I just let life move me. And as you know, I'm dealing with like a very like seems like last significant thing that's stopping my process from resolving. It's really frustrating. And I'm just allowing myself to be carried.
Mm.
And then the last thing I'll say is that, as I say that, something conceptually just helped me is like this idea of nonlinearity that the first speaker brought up is like that's helpful. That concept, that model of a certain part of reality is helpful. Like I've been struggling with this block in the head for over 10 years. And some part of my mind wants to tell itself I did this and I did that and I purged for 6 years and like, but it all could just be like this is just like it's nonlinear. It's just like boom, one day it's just done, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Jay, for your reflections and sharing about your experience. Yeah, you've taken us to a place here where I didn't see on the map of what I was sharing today, which is brilliant. Perhaps we're not meant to create a new paradigm or to create a new model of reality. Perhaps we're just meant to allow our experiences to dismantle the old ones, and we rest in a place where we say, I don't know what's going on here. Like, and
Yeah.
that's okay.
I
Yeah.
find I find myself there right now. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Any model we create, it's not the full picture. Nobody knows what's going on here. Right? We
Yeah.
can't know. We
Yeah.
can't know. We can only just be here. But if we feel like we have these rigid models, they're all incorrect. They're all incorrect, of course. And that's why we, get, uncomfortable at times. Yeah, when you describe, not knowing where you're at on the path, one model that I like, at least when it I think about these ideas is the Buddhist maps, which break down enlightenment into various stages. And the first stage, Sotapanna stream enterer, there's still lots of suffering there. Despite it being the first stage of enlightenment, a person realizes no self, right? A person realizes that there is no permanent, fixed sense of me or I. And yet still they fall back into suffering and have to now work and practice to heal the parts that are not in alignment with that realization. And then there's, of course, three further stages of enlightenment, which are just deeper and deeper, at least the way that I see it, deeper and deeper relaxation into truth, like you were saying, the relaxed, safe sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, Thank you for your reflections, Jay. You've got some great feedback in the chat as well. Thank you. Let's
Thanks,
hear
Brent.
from, oh, no problem. Let's hear from Dipali. Hey, Dipali.
Hi, Brent. Hi, everyone. Um, so I just want to piggyback on some of the points that were made. And well, personally, for me, this experience is forcing a level of surrender that I've never really felt like I've had to um, access. I don't know if that's the right word, but I I feel like because there's so much unknown, the new paradigm to me feels just that. It's like, how do you surrender and trust in a society right now where people typically say, "What do you do for work?" or "Aren't you worried about your 401k?" or just all the old things, and then to be feeling like quite the minority on this leading edge, not even really be able to talk about, okay, like I'm experiencing something called Kundalini. And so it's really, for me, the new paradigm has felt like finding a way to be comfortable with relinquishing more and more control. But also, I guess where it gets confusing is like, I know I can't just lay around like forever. So there's like this time where I'm probably going to have to figure out, okay, what am here to do? I'm currently unable right now where I'm at. I'm still purging and things like that. Energy is all over the place. But um, I feel that we're being asked to re-enter with fresh perspective and purpose that is bigger than we maybe ever thought. I really do feel like we are on the leading edge, like you said, Brent, and it's like the point where it's like a friend of mine says, it's the tip of the spear. And so it requires a lot of courage. It requires enormous faith and an ability to like surrender and trust, um, and to see that we're all here sort of playing our part, and to see how we're not so separate like we thought, but also learning how to maintain boundaries and letting go of toxic relations but still loving it. There's so much that can be said. It's such a big topic. And I think I'll have different perspective on a future call, but since I'm still really kind of in the thick of it, it's hard for me to really say much more because that's all I can access right now.
That's very deep and profound wisdom that you've shared, that you've been able to access for us. Yeah, thank you, Dipali. Yeah, it's paradoxical finding the balance between these two paradigms and somehow integrating it back into the world where others are not necessarily operating in this new paradigm with us. That's an art. That's an art. Yeah. I like the way that you described relinquishing control, really what it comes down to. The ego, the old paradigm is all about control, grip, fear, and this process saying, let's try something different. Yeah, and it's not always clear what that something different is. Yeah. Thank you so much, Dipali.
Thank you.
Yeah, great clarity from you tonight. I'm just gonna check out the chat here and then we'll hear from Amanda. Hugo shares, at one point, I too felt like a ship without a rudder in an expansive ocean, simply bobbing around at the mercy of the unknown, learning to trust in the unseen underneath the ocean's surface. Yeah, once again, that theme of control. Tracy shares, being stuck in hermit mode, my experience with discomfort is about not knowing what comes next. I'm meant to surrender to what my soul wants because I'm no longer in charge, but it feels like stagnation when it's supposed to be about rest, healing, and integration. Even surrendering slash allowing the energy to do its work is physically uncomfortable for me. Yeah, it's very challenging, especially when allowing the energy to do its work is uncomfortable, sometimes painful, be very challenging. Yeah. Yeah. Rest and stagnation can feel very similar, very similar. Yeah, especially if we have beliefs around rest being a form of stagnation, that can bring a lot of friction. Yeah, let's hear from Amanda.
Um, Hi, I am going to trust that this isn't this is an example of it happening in real time where this is not thought through, but I'm trying to just let the words come and um but yeah, this all resonates with things I've been thinking about a lot in terms of understanding and like both like being understood by other people who are not going through this process and also the desire to understand myself and when that's control and when that's like, I guess this like developmental desire to be understood by others, this like kind of like really early kind of like safety of like to be known and understood means can be taken care of by others and to enter this process is suddenly like putting you in disconnection from like typical people here. Um, and then like almost bringing that back to myself, like not understanding myself is this like, how can I take care and have a relationship to myself? Um, and yeah, I don't know exactly. Because there's moments where when I do just like let things happen and like energy will come up and be released and be really yeah, feel very powerful and like much more powerful than if I were to like plan or like under like know things in my mind, but not being able to like understand it or being able to know like what this is from or what experience in my life this is from or a different life or it can be really, really, really challenging for me. And I know it's things are happening and working. Um, but yeah, I think I've recently just felt like a lot of like, yeah, grief of not having like a future to be sure of or aim towards anymore, or even like a present. And yeah, I think it's just a lot of, I've gotten a lot more comfortable with the being in the flow and this like liquid nature of all of this, but it's like definitely grief of the like there's nothing really to there like, it is really high ground. Um I'm asking, I guess I do have the question of like um when understanding, yeah, like how can I try to understand um this what's happening energetically like or like how can I integrate those two because right now they feel really like disconnected somehow and is there ways to like bring that level of energetic knowledge up to my conscious awareness that can like help me.
Yeah, Amanda, I think you cut out when you mentioned the two things that you're talking about integrating here. Would you mind repeating that part?
Yeah, the last part.
Yeah, just about the two. What were the two concepts you're speaking about?
Um, I guess like energetic phenomenon experiences, specifically like release of things, but like that versus like kind of like a conscious awareness of like what it's
Ah,
uh like what that experience is about or what's happening.
yeah, yeah. Thank you so much for sharing, just in the flow there, sharing with us beautifully. Yeah. You mentioned the word grief, which is a big part of what I'm speaking about here, and the discomfort of these paradigm shifts, right? We have to grieve the loss of things that no longer serve us and this old way of operating that may have served us quite well. We may have gotten by in life. Some of us, like I said, may have become quite successful with control and fear and effort and operating as if we were completely separate. And now we have to like let that go, and that will naturally bring grief, right? So thank you for taking us to that place and just validating all of those out there who may be feeling some grief around these paradigm shifts, of course. Yeah, what I found as we go through certain releases, purges, things come up to be let go of, certain major themes we can note what they're related to, what they're about. Um, but not all of it. Some of it seems to be like very primal, um, perhaps pre-verbal, perhaps collective, ancestral, where we don't have a particular association with a time in our life or an event or a trauma. It's just something so raw that we can't pinpoint exactly where it is. Some of it maybe just by virtue of being a human, being a man, being a woman, maybe coming from a particular culture that face particular oppression, for example. So we just have all of that stuff coming up and we just watch it. We just watch it. We don't necessarily need to know every last detail about what this is from, which past life, which time in our life. What does this mean? What are the implications of this release? We don't need to know all of that. It can be helpful, of course, it can be helpful. But if there are times where it's hard to get clarity on what it's about, I think we can just let it go and trust that our body knows to release, knows to release. Um, I think of it kind of like if we're taking out the trash, we don't need to like start digging through the trash to understand where this trash came from. We just throw it all out, right? You can, if you want, to think about where it came from. It's no harm. It could have some data there for sure, but not necessary. Not necessary. Does that get to what you were touching on, Amanda? Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that gets to it. And I think I sometimes get lost digging through the trash and like, yeah, it doesn't feel peaceful.
Yeah, and that's okay. Like it is, it's very interesting, especially if you're inclined towards like, psychology and things like this. It can be very interesting, be a lot of data, a lot of data. But if it becomes like too stressful or too overwhelming, know that you don't need to know all of the details of every last thing that we're purging. You can just let the body just dump it, just dump it. And note also that you'll feel the benefits of it in some way or another. Maybe not immediately, but over the course of the rest of your life, the benefits of having released those things will arise. And you may not even notice directly, but you'll see it in your life or it will arise in your life. Yeah.
Yeah, that's helpful. No, I think it is like a desire, like a inability to be with the uncertainty, which is kind of what we were talking about earlier, which is why it's, yeah, I think that there's like curiosity and then there's that and like letting go of that to
Yeah.
like be more okay with the unknowable stuff.
Yeah. 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 So we don't want to get too in our head. And if we can remember to catch ourselves being in our head and just move into the heart or move into the gut and just let the gut, the heart feel and process and gather its own data out of the experience. The mind can sometimes get in the way, sometimes get in the way and halt the process. Yeah. I'm imagining like, if you ask somebody to come renovate your house and they're doing stuff and then you keep interrupting by saying, okay, explain to me what you're doing. This is my house. I need to know exactly what you're doing and why and where does this fit in the process. They're going to get frustrated with you. They're going to say, let us do our job. We don't have time to explain every last detail about what we're doing to you. Just trust us. By the end, you'll have a new kitchen. You'll be happy. You know, like that's some weird metaphor coming to me, but hopefully it speaks to someone. Thank you so much, Amanda. Yeah. Okay, let's hear from Sony.
Yeah, I think some of my experiences have been scary. So I've kind of not like gotten away from meditation at times. Some of my experiences have been amazing, like really good. But then there's this confusion. I think it's not like what do I understand about life? I think it's like now there's more questions. There are things that I didn't understand, but I understand more deeply because I come from a background where things are very straightforward. You meditate, you pray, and over time you accumulate good karma. Um, and eventually you get enlightenment. And in my experience, it's been very painful at times. And I think seeing things differently, but also has helped. But in addition to that, I've had difficulty kind of resonating with people who I've been close to in the past as well. So there's been this like isolation and loneliness at times. So I think right now I understand like the synchronicities. I'm understanding like certain things have happened in certain ways to help me to grow spiritually. But I think now it's a matter of what are going to be my practices. Like, what am I going to do to progress? And I think there is a component of impatience as well as fear. Like, I'm impatient. Like, I want to do things very quickly now. Now that I'm not as afraid, I want to figure out how do I do this more quickly. But I am trying to be mindful that I shouldn't force it. And I think that's where I get very, like in my head, there's like this back and forth, and I get very frustrated and depressed at times. And it's kind of hard to, like, now, also now that I know all of these things, it's difficult to explain them to people I've known my whole life. They don't really understand it.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Sony. Yeah. Yeah, there's very common themes. I like what you're sharing there. We understand what's happening. Okay, I get it. Now let's get on with it and get it over with. Right? So first we have this question of what's happening. That's our challenge. We make sense of what's happening. Then the next challenge is to deal with the impatience of it not happening at the pace that we would prefer. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, of course, being gentle with our body as we go through this, acknowledging like this is a lot. This is a lot. When I was going through like really intense purging and purification, I mean, for me, it lasted, the really intense part was 6 weeks. And I remember having a thought that if all of the stuff I purged in the course of that 6 weeks, if all of that stuff came up in one instant, I would die. My body could not take it. I would die, right? So our system knows to draw it out so that we can actually survive it, that there's little breaks in between so that we don't get completely, burned up in the process. The other thing that I think about when I think about this idea of my model of reality or my paradigm, when we think about the pace at which our process unfolds within our system, we also have to acknowledge that that doesn't just have to do with this body here or this energy field here. It has to do with all of reality. So we don't want all of reality to be um, lagging behind. If we have a really instantaneous shift and the people that you're meant to relate with or the things that you're meant to do in the world aren't lining up with you, that's not going to be good. So we also want to give the entire world a chance to go through its process so that when the time's right for you to have those encounters that you're meant to have and do the work that you're meant to do, everything is in its place. Because we can have a big shift here, but if the world is not ready, well, then we're going to still be uncomfortable and not feel like we, are in alignment. And so that's the other thing I think about, say we're waiting for some big service that we're going to do or a relationship that we're looking for. We want the people that we're serving to be in a position where they're ready to accept our service, or the people that we're in a relationship to be in a position where they're able to relate with us. So we want to give them a chance to also go through their work too. So that helps me, at least when I think about it. That helps to calm the impatient part of me down. It's I say, okay, I want everything to unfold at the right pace, which involves the rest of the world, not just my system. And so that kind of calms me down and says, okay, everything's unfolding at the right pace. Everything is going to be in the right order. I don't need to rush this. That helps me at least. Maybe some others have ideas for how we can deal with this idea of feeling impatient with the process, especially after it's, been a long time of discomfort and fear and things like that. How do you deal with impatience? You can let us know. Thank you so much, Sony. Hugo shares, for me, as a transition from doing to being, which Kundalini opens one up to. The doing for me was ingrained until my world came crashing down. For good reason, as the controlling mind eventually tired me out. Yeah, completely different paradigm. This is something that I've been contemplating a lot from Abraham Hicks, who says it's not about what we do, it's about how we feel. It's about our vibration. It's about the thoughts we think, the emotions we feel, not about what we do, which is so contradictory to what we may have grown up with, being told we have to do this or that, and then we'll have particular outcomes. Yeah, let's hear from Aiden.
There we go. Hello, everybody.
Hey, Aiden.
Yeah, so I actually have a point on the impatient stuff, but I also have a couple other things I want to share. Um, I think one of the most interesting things about this process is uh, early on, what I believe to be like what was early on into this process, you really start to notice a lot of things that just are out of place anymore, just things that like behaviors or ways of thinking or whatever the case is. Um, when usually, before, this gets kicked on, you're just like, whatever, I'm living life. And then it's interesting because it's like, then you just like, when you start to catch out what's wrong with it, like why you don't appreciate it anymore or why it makes you unhappy, like certain repeating things, karma, whatever. It. What was I gonna say about it? Give me a second here. Yeah, you just don't realize that first, and it makes you just feel like, oh, it must be a me problem. It must be like something that, oh, maybe I'm just feeling anxious. Maybe I'm just feeling depressed because you're not used to it bothering you. And I think that's what happened to me early on. Is that yeah, I used to cling on to um, stuff like that, uh, where I used to say, hey, okay. Um, I used to cling on to the happiness of like where I was when my consciousness was like lower when I was like younger in a sense, Um, and I think that's just it's a very interesting transition. That's something that I had to experience. It's started off with being like, oh, there's something off with me, but then when I actually started like working through it, I was able to find like more of a balance and I think I was just so used to not normalizing how I felt, how I thought about things, the way in which I like how I thought about the world and stuff like that, or whatever the case is. And the way that I feel like that relates to like patience and stuff like that is that, um, yeah, I really had to let go of uh, by letting go of like the old happiness, like what I used to think was happiness. Um, is that what I used to do was I used to think back to a thought or think about to a way that I felt back then or something like that. Um, uh, oh my goodness, I'm losing my train of thought here. Hold on.
That's okay.
Uh, yeah, I think it's just interesting how stuff like that happens. Okay, that's what I have. I lost my train of thought, but hope maybe somebody got something from that. All
Yeah,
right,
thank you. Thank you, Aiden. Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting when we begin to awaken or have this heightened degree of self-awareness, it can be pretty uncomfortable as we catch ourselves engaging in thoughts, behaviors that may be out of alignment from, what we feel is right or whatnot. Yeah, it's pretty uncomfortable. And people that are quote unquote asleep often don't have that to the same degree. And they also don't beat themselves up about it in the way that some of us spiritual people beat ourselves up because we are, able to watch and reflect on our behavior and thoughts and words. And yeah, it's uncomfortable at times. Yeah. Thank you, Aiden. Let's hear from Catherine and then Tom, and then we'll begin to wind down. I'm a little
Yeah, I just
toasted today. Go ahead, Catherine.
thanks, Brent. No, I wanted to comment on the surrender aspect. I think that yeah, I've never like the level of surrender that this has required. I mean, it's unreal. Like I just like I have been on my knees many times. I mean, it's just, and I think for me personally, like it's this dichotomy of I mean, I would say that every single day, this path is not for the faint of heart. Like it's been a very challenging and that's why I'm so proud of myself, like for it. And I had to have a really, really strong will to survive what I survived as a child. And I understand that and I've needed really extreme surrender circumstances to let that willfulness go. And part of what I I kind of work with the titration of agency and surrender, like what's in my control and what's not. And so I'm very disciplined about movement and just doing what I can do to aid the process, because yoga in the morning and I do something in the evening and eat, sleep, all those things. And I recognize too that for me, it's just when I shift into acceptance, I mean, it's the isness of it. Like it just, this is it, like I can want it to be different. And I talk to God, honestly. I yell at God sometimes. Like, this is not fair. No, but I mean, I don't hold back with the emotions around it because I think that that's, for me, Matt Kahn says this. He says, you'll get the next experience you need in life to have the emotion that you need to have. So for me, oftentimes, if I can just, it's acceptance and sinking into the emotion around it. And yeah, but it is, I think, the surrender part is so much about this path for me is like that's the ego part that I needed to surrender is that control, that figuring it out, the being in charge. So, but yeah, I empathize with it. It's taken, I mean, I'm like, thank God I didn't know how long this is going to take and how hard it was going to be because I don't think I would have. I'm like, people seek this? Who are they? Anyhow.
Yeah. Yeah. There are some people who seek it and it happens and they're still like sh incredibly shocked and disturbed. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Catherine. Yeah, that piece from Matt Kahn about, life will bring up the next emotion or feeling for us to clear was extremely, extremely helpful and still continues to be helpful for me. And so the way that I see that is sometimes people will be confused by their process. What is happening? What is this process doing? What's going on? What's the solution? And I say, okay, looks like confusion is what's being cleared at the moment by your process. Impatience, frustration. So the process is so brilliant in the way that it just digs everything up to be cleared. Nothing that comes up throughout this process is outside of the process. Even your thoughts about the process are part of the process. Your feelings about the process. all coming up to be cleared and released. And so that's where surrender comes in. Just total surrender. You can't get it wrong. You can't get it wrong. Thank you so much, Catherine. Yeah, and Dipali adds here, it's been like that for me too. Drop to my knees over and over. Yeah, me too. Okay, let's hear from Tom.
Again, I one of the things about the process of getting all this information that we don't understand is it seems to me that the answers are coming before the questions are asked. We've got it's kind of a strange thing to find out things that you really will ask and will eventually come to, but you're giving all this stuff like right away. And for some people say, it's an overload of of information. It's an overload of wisdom that we're not ready for at that point. And I don't understand why that happens, except maybe is well, in some ways, I'm likely we are ready for it, but it nevertheless is disconcerting to know things that that we don't even contemplate, and all of a sudden to have an understanding that there's a good chance that the universe is holographic, or that our perception comes from in a holographic kind of a way. So that was one thing that sort of came to me when someone was talking about the holographic universe, and then because of that, having to have faith in something we don't understand. That it's by faith I mean having faith in ourselves, confidence, self-confidence that this is not leading us, that we're not going to be injured by it in any long-lasting or real sense. We're going to be changed by it, though, and that having the confidence that's going to work in our benefit and not to our detriment. There's always that thing we have about, go get your something or other. Let's say, go study medicine instead of studying music, because, well, you can do music anytime, but you only have a certain amount of time to study medicine. And when you do music, it'll give you something to fall back on in case your career doesn't take off. And it's kind of funny. The 17-year-old pianist was amazing. For some reason, I was traveled the world, and also said in an interview, he noticed that people who have things to fall back on most often fall back because they haven't invested 100% in playing piano, or just like this, you haven't invested. Well, I don't know how much to invest in this. This is just too weird. But anyway, the other thing was an interesting comment by Catherine regarding yelling at God. There's a funny story you might like, Catherine, or anyone might like it, but a fellow who worshiped God and had a statue built of him, and for a big expense, and a temple to put the statue in, and et cetera, et cetera. You can see where it's going. And um, when he wanted something from God, though, when he needed something, it didn't happen. And it really pissed him off. It really made him angry. So he waited and waited, and nothing, still didn't get his wish. So he began, that statue began screaming at it, you goddamned son of a bitch. You think you're a god, but you don't even know. Look all I've done for you. You haven't done anything for me. There's all these years. And suddenly God appears. And the man is just chagrined and shamed, uh and he asks, well, God damn it, why now? Why, when I'm insulting you and I've spit on your statue, why do you suddenly appear instead of all those times when I was worshiping you properly? And God's reply is, because it's the first time in your entire life that you've treated me like I really exist.
Oh,
Anyway, signing off on that
profound.
one.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Tom. Yeah, that's profound. That's profound. Yeah. That's what I've found as well in my own journey, that God wants a real relationship, which means, expressing how you really feel. So if you're upset, express it. God can take it. God should be able to handle whatever emotional energy you approach God with. Of course, it's not like it can't take it. right? If anyone can, God can, right? Dipali shares in the chat. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think God responds to energy behind our prayer, emotion behind our prayer, right? Whether that's anger, frustration, longing, of course, love, joy, devotion for sure, but anything genuine, it seems that God listens, shows up in some way. Yeah. Catherine shares, God is big enough for all of me. I don't blame God. I ask how I'm supposed to do it all. Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah. Because you're willing to do it all. I imagine. Maybe I'm putting words in your mouth there, Catherine. But I know when I ask similar questions, I'm willing to do whatever God wants me to do, but sometimes I don't know what that is. I'm not asking for God to do it. I'm saying, God, tell me what to do and I will do it. But right now, I don't know. I don't know. Yeah. Well, thank you all so much for this really exciting conversation, for all of your contributions and support for one another. I appreciate you all so much. This has been a fun one. Tomorrow we'll have a Kundalini Q&A meeting. Those take place Mondays, 2 p.m. Eastern on Zoom. Join us. Appreciate you all so much. Thank you all for being here, sharing so openly. Thank you for your donations as well. It goes a long way for me. It really does. I've got some openings for some one-to-one meetings. If anyone would like to go deep with me, you can find out more at brentspirit.com. Check out kundaliniawareness.org. All of the links to everything will be in the description. We've got some free courses as well. Check it all out. Much love.